Hello, my name is Laura and welcome to my very first YouTube video. I'm very excited about this actually. It's kind of something I wanted to do for a long time, but I don't know, never felt like I really had anything to talk about. But I wanted today to talk about my birth story because I recently gave birth in October. It's kind of one of the craziest experiences I've ever had and like the most amazing thing I ever gone through. I'm already starting to forget a lot of the stuff that happened, you know, when I was giving birth and all of that. So I really just wanted to use this video to document it, not only for like a resource as for other people to use, because I can't tell you how many birth, labor and delivery story times and vlogs I watched on YouTube and how many, you know, blog posts I read when I was pregnant. So, you know, maybe this will help one person feel better about giving birth. But I also wanted to use this as like for my own personal reasons, just to look back on so I don't forget. I won't bore you with all the details of my pregnancy, but my due date was October 13th, 2020. So that was when I was supposed to be 40 weeks pregnant. I was supposed to be giving birth at a birth center. So I went to the Charleston birthplace. They were doing all my checkups, the midwives were doing all my checkups and everything. So I went in on my due date. I hadn't had any Braxton Hicks contractions. I hadn't had anything like that. I had a little more discharge than normal, so I thought that could maybe be my mucus plug. But other than that, like, I really didn't feel close to giving birth at all. So when I went in, they asked if I would like my cervix checked. And I said, yeah. So they checked my cervix. I think I was like 60% effaced, which means my cervix was thinning out. And I was, I think, either half a centimeter or 1 centimeter dilated. So I was like not along at all, because 10 centimeters is when you get that urge to like bear down and push. So the midwife was like, yeah, you're not giving birth anytime soon. And I was like, okay. I wasn't like too uncomfortable. I did have a little bit of heartburn, but I wasn't so uncomfortable. So I started taking some herbs and evening primrose oil. I don't remember exactly the herbs that I was taking. Oh, I was taking black cohosh. Those are supposed to help your cervix soften too. A couple days go by, October 15th at like 11 p.m. I started having contractions, and so I was timing them myself. Like, my husband was sleeping, my mom was staying at my house, and she was sleeping. I had hired a doula, but I hadn't called her yet. I started to feel real, so then I was like, okay, probably not Braxton Hicks. And then by that time it was like, probably had rolled over to like 1 a.m. or something on the 16th, October 16th. I woke my husband up, woke my mom up, told her what was going on, called my doula and was like, hey, I am having contractions, like, can you come? And she was like, actually, crazy thing, my other client, who was supposed to give birth around the same time you are, called me and said she's being induced tonight, but she doesn't want me there yet, so I can come to you first. But since she did call me first, you're gonna have to use a backup doula if I can't go to I can't be at the birth with you. And I was like, okay, you know, that's totally fine. Like, I trust your backup doula. So my doula comes and she's just like reassuring me that everything is going good. I'm still having contractions, but I can talk through them, so they're not that bad. And then my doula gave me a TENS unit because I was having a lot of back labor. It hooked up to my back, and I think it's like, it kind of feels like a little shock almost. It was just to kind of like offset the back labor pains. So I would turn it on every time I was having a contraction, because then I'd really feel the back labor pain. So I was just, you know, going through the motions, like I was on my birthing ball. I was just, you know, moaning it out like you do when you're giving birth. We're like, okay, we're to the point where we can call the on-call midwife and go into the birth center so that I can give birth there. Because my contractions were like, they have to be like X amount of time long, X amount of time apart, and you have to have had them in those conditions for like an hour or whatever. So I was having contractions every like 3 minutes pretty much, for a minute long, for an hour. So we called the midwife. She's like, okay, be there at 7:15 a.m. That's when I'll be there. So we like plan to get everything together. We get there at 7:15 a.m. Having contractions in the car is not fun. Let me tell you, not fun at all. So we get to the birth center, and my mom can come, and my doula can come, and my husband can come. And we get in there, and she's like, starts running the tub of water, and is like, all right, do you want me to check your cervix? And I was like, yes. So she checks my cervix, and I am 1 centimeter dilated. I had been in labor for like 8 hours, and I was at 1 centimeter dilated, which is what I was at when I had gone to the birth center. and got my cervix checked on my due date. So that was really disheartening, and almost immediately, because of where I was emotionally and mentally, my contractions went to 10 minutes apart. I think just because my body could tell that I was like stressed out about it, and then, you know, when you're in like a fight or flight mode is not really the time to give birth, so your body's like, nope, hold on. And so the midwife was like, you have a couple of options. You can either stay here, and it's totally fine if you want to stay here and labor here, like that's fine, like you're paying to be here. And she was like, but you might feel more comfortable if you go back home and labor at home, so you can like be in your bed, whatever. And so I decided to go back home. So we go back home, and then my doula has to leave and go be with her other client. So then her backup doula comes, and her backup doula is great. I just hadn't had as much connection prior to my labor and delivery that with her backup doula, so I wasn't as comfortable with her. So I get home, I try and take a little bit of a nap now that my contractions are not as bad, and I maybe sleep for like an hour. So I come back out, and I'm just like chilling on the couch in my living room, and my mom made me some oatmeal. So I eat the oatmeal, and then almost immediately I throw up. And then from that point on, every time I would eat or drink something, I would throw it up. So I labored all day, and it's such a blur. I don't really remember it because I was so exhausted because I had been up for so many hours. So I was still using the TENS unit. I was using a peanut ball. I was doing like side lying, which is supposed to help get the baby in the right position. So I would do the side lying position, like literally just laying on your side. And then you have your hips at like a specific angle. I would hang my leg over my hip. I don't really know how to explain it. And that hurt like hell, let me tell you. That one was so bad. Also, sorry if you can hear baby noises. There's a baby down here. She's a little cranky. And yeah, I really don't remember much from that whole day. So it was like 5 p.m. and my contractions were back where they were that morning. And my doula, the backup doula, was talking about how either I could check my cervix or my husband could check my cervix to see where I was, if I had progressed along at all. And so since I was just exhausted, didn't feel like getting in the position to like check my own cervix, and like figured it'd be easier if someone else did it. So my husband did it, which I was actually really surprised that he even, you know, would do it. But he checked my cervix and said that it was like 4 centimeters dilated from what he could feel, which I'm not going to explain to you how to check your cervix. I would probably want someone who knows how to check a cervix explain it to you, but no, don't do it if you don't know what you're doing because you don't want to hurt yourself. So we decided to get in the car and go to the birth center. We get there, and the midwife checks my cervix and is like, yeah, you're 4 centimeters dilated. So we start the pool running, and you know, I'm getting in the pool, and then I kind of started to overheat. So then I got out of the pool for a little bit, then I got back in the pool, and then this is where it was just like so bad. So it's nighttime now, like it's dark outside and everything. You know, we're playing music and, you know, got essential oils going, and I still hadn't eaten or drank anything because I couldn't. And me and my husband are in the tub together. He's like doing a pressure point in my back because I had a lot of back labor. Every time I have a contraction and I'm in the tub, like on my hands and knees, my mom is in front of me, and I just kept telling her, I can't do this. I can't. Like I was in such a bad state of mind that I just kept saying, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And telling yourself you can't do something when it's something you have to do, not a good combo. You know, my mom is just like, you can do it, like I totally believe in you. Like you got this, like you've made it this far, like you're so strong and everything. So the midwife was like, okay, we can check your cervix again if you want. So I got out of the tub, she checked my cervix, and I was only at 6 centimeters dilated, and this was like 30 hours of labor. But she didn't tell me that because she didn't want me to get disappointed again, you know. So, but everyone else knew. They didn't want to tell me either, you know, my husband and my mom, because they were like, you know, I would have just probably had the same reaction as before. So then the midwife was like, okay, you have a couple of options. You can get back in the tub, you can labor out here, you know, you can go to the hospital if you want to, or we can see if some sleep would do you some good. Like I can give you a shot in your butt, hook you up to some IV fluids. You know, the shot in your butt will help you sleep, and then I can give you something to make you not nauseous. And I was like, you know what, that sounds like a good idea. So we did that. For the first hour, I slept, and it was good. And then a couple hours after that, I would fall asleep, and then wake up for my contractions, and then fall asleep, wake up for my contractions, fall asleep, you know. I did that for a couple of hours, and then, you know, finally I was like, okay, I'm gonna get up, try the tub again. Like, I was raring and ready to go. And then the tub was just not working. I kept overheating. Like, I wanted the water to be warm, like hot, because it felt so good on me. But then I would just overheat, and like the top half of me was so sweaty, and my mom kept having like a cool rag and like put it on my forehead or like the back of my neck just to help me cool off. But everything was just not working. At this point, I had lost my mucus plug, but my waters hadn't broken. So then, you know, I get out and we're trying inversions. So I'm like basically doing a handstand. Every time I have a contraction, we're doing the side line where I kick my leg over and I'm laying on my side. Then we do one where I'm like arching my back and like leaning over something, like laying on my back. And that was so painful, let me tell you. And then we're doing one where I'm like, my arms are wrapped around like these silks that are hanging from the ceiling. And I'm like leaning back on my husband, and I was just so exhausted and nothing was working. You know, the baby kept flipping sides, so like she would be like in the perfect position to give birth, and then she would flip right back over. Not breech, but like she would always flip back to the right side when like the left side is the best position, or like the most common position. Finally, the midwife is like, okay. At this point, it's like, what, 11 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m.? No, probably like 9 a.m. She's like, you know, we have a couple of options. I can break your waters, because my waters still hadn't broken. You can keep doing what you've been doing, or you can go to the hospital if you want to go to the hospital and get an epidural, and that, you know, might help you sleep, and then you can be more ready to push out your baby. And I was like, you know what? So I was so exhausted that the idea of not having to be in pain anymore after being in pain for like, and after being in that kind of pain for 30 hours, having some relief from that plus being able to sleep sounded like literally the best thing in the world. Like, you could have offered me $1 million and I wouldn't have taken it if I could have that epidural. So I kind of felt really defeated because I wanted to have like as natural of a birth as possible, but that obviously wasn't happening because I was going to the hospital and I was gonna get an epidural, and I just felt totally defeated and like I had failed myself and failed my baby, because I wanted her to have the best initial chance in life. And, you know, sometimes getting an epidural can, you know, have negative consequences. So, you know, we go to the hospital, I get checked in and everything. I'm still hooked up to my IV that they gave me at the birth center, and I literally had it like hanging in the car, and I had to get a COVID test. And this part I think was kind of messed up. I mean, I guess I understand why they did it, because they were so worried about COVID, but they literally wheeled me into a room all by myself because I was in a wheelchair because I was having contractions and I couldn't walk. And someone literally came in after 10 minutes in a freaking hazmat suit to give me my COVID test. You know, they stuck it up my nose. It wasn't that bad, but also I was in a lot more pain and discomfort, like in a different area. So I don't think anything really, you know, unless you chopped my arm off, would have been able to top that. They tell me I have to wear a mask until my test comes back negative. And every time we were in the room by ourselves and I was having a contraction, I would literally rip my mask off. Because if you've ever tried to breathe through a contraction when you're in that much pain, and literally the only thing getting you through it is breathing, and you have a mask on, no, it doesn't work. At least it didn't for me. Then it's me and my midwife and my doula and my husband all in the room. When you get transferred from a birth center to a hospital, at least at the birth center I was at and the hospital I was at, you don't have a doctor still. You get a nurse from the hospital and then your midwife. which is totally fine because midwives are trained to deliver babies, so I wasn't worried about it. So I come in and the nurse is like, did you want your epidural now? And I was like, yes. Could I have gotten it sooner if I would have asked? Because that was the whole reason I was there, was to get this freaking epidural. So the anesthesiologist comes in and gives me my epidural, and I'm literally like having a contraction, like trying to breathe through it as he's explaining to me the like risk and benefit of a epidural. And then I had to like sign some paper. I just felt like everything wasn't explained to me very well. I didn't really know what was going on. So he gives me like a numbing shot first, because if you've ever heard people talk about the epidural needles, they're big, like thick. So he gives me a numbing shot first, and that hurt. It felt like a bee sting in my back. And then I don't think I really felt the epidural needle go in, but they told me that I wasn't gonna need a catheter. They just like emptied out my bladder every so often, like they would stick a catheter in, empty out my bladder, and then take it out. So I never had to have a catheter in like for a long period of time. So then I wasn't in pain afterwards, which was nice. So I got my epidural, and it was the craziest thing in the world. Like feeling it was like a waterfall of cold down my back, and then no pain. Like literally no pain. And I am so thankful that I had like 0 negative effects. Okay, so obviously this is a different day. I had to put Hazel down for a nap in the middle of filming that other video, and then other stuff just happened and I didn't have a chance to finish the video while the lighting was still good. I think the last thing that I talked about was getting my epidural, and then I had like basically no pain after. I think it was around like 9 a.m. when I got my epidural. I literally just like laid back in the hospital bed with my mask on and like came in and out of sleep. My doula was sleeping, my backup doula was sleeping in the chair, and then my husband was sleeping on like the couch thing that they have in there. So they let me sleep for about an hour and then asked me if I wanted Pitocin, and I was like, yeah. It's like a fake version of one of the hormones that gets birth going. So it makes your contractions stronger. So once I got the Pitocin, I could feel my contractions, but it was more of like a tightening and not really a pain. And when you get an epidural, they give you this button that you can press, and you can only press it like every 10 minutes, and it gives you like actually a little dose of the pain medication. At this point, I'm awake and I can feel my contractions, but only like pressure and tightness, and it doesn't really feel like what it had been feeling like. They're monitoring them. They have like a monitor, a heart rate monitor for the baby around my stomach, and a contraction monitor, so they can tell like when I'm having contractions and like how far apart they are and everything like that. Everything was going great. My contractions were they were about like 5 minutes apart, so it wasn't like super great. And even though I had an epidural, I could still move my legs. It just felt like they were like when your legs are asleep, and it just feels like heavy, or I don't know really how to explain it. It just felt like really heavy, and like I could feel pressure, but I couldn't feel pain. We checked my cervix and I was 9 centimeters dilated. After having the Pitocin for a while and my contractions getting closer and closer, this time it's probably like 11:30 or something like that. I don't really know. I was so out of it. So at this point, I'm 9 centimeters dilated. My waters still haven't broken. My husband is going to catch the baby. And because my waters hadn't broken, they were like, well, you know, it could be a huge mess, like more of a huge mess, like if the amniotic sac breaks when the baby comes out, like spray everywhere. So my husband puts on this whole white suit thing or whatever, like over his clothes. The midwife is getting ready, the nurse is getting ready, my doula is there. She's like, you know, just talking to me. She's telling me that, you know, everything is going great. And then they asked me if I want a mirror so that I can see. At this point, I'm still laying on my back. They asked me if I want a mirror so that I can see what's going on, because obviously my stomach is big, my legs are open, I can't see what's going on down there. And I was like, no. And then my doula was like, it might be really cool just to see, you know, like you don't have to watch Hazel totally being born, but like just see the beginning, you know, of like starting to push and everything. And I was like, sure. So I think someone's holding it for me. It was a crazy thing. I'm still laying on my back. I felt the urge to push. So like every time I would have a contraction, so I start pushing, it's just like the amniotic sac is coming out, but it hasn't popped yet. Like it's just like this like balloon basically that like has liquid in it, like coming out every time I push. And when you give birth, it's like 3 steps forwards, 2 steps backwards, because you know, you push, and then when you're done pushing, like, yes, you pushed far enough that like some came out, but like some baby came out, or like baby's moving further down, but when you stop pushing also it kind of like sucks it back in. Then my doula is like, would you feel better if you were like on your hands and knees, because you know that's how you have been laboring most of the time, is like on your hands and knees. It seems to be the most comfortable position for you. And I was like, you know what, you're right. So because I'm like have an epidural, like they have to help me flip over, so then I'm on my hands and knees, then I'm pushing, and now I really can't see, but like my doula would take a video and then she would like come up and show me. And honestly at this, like everything was such a blur, like I'm pushing and then stopping and pushing and stopping and pushing and stopping, and to me it honestly, it felt like 10 minutes at most that I was pushing for. That amniotic sac is like coming out more and more and more, and then Hazel comes out with it. And my husband said he was really surprised, like, so he did catch Hazel, and when he caught her, then the amniotic sac broke and her umbilical cord was wrapped around her neck like 4 times. Like, when he caught her, he was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, because it's like, you know, that moment when you're like, I'm actually a parent now, like this is real, like this actually just happened. So I'm sure it was so surreal for him. I cried immediately when she came out. I didn't even see her, but it was like, not to be like of course I love my daughter, but honestly 50% of it was relief that 37 hours of me being in labor was over, and 50% of it was, wow, I have a baby now. Like, it's so crazy. Midwife, you know, just unwraps the umbilical cord, because I'm sure they've seen it happen so many times. So then I have to like flip over because I'm on my hands and knees so that they can put the baby on me. And we did delayed cord clamping, so you don't clamp the cord and cut it until it's done pulsating, because the baby can still get nutrients from the placenta. Once the cord did stop pulsating and they clamped it, my husband did cut the cord. The placenta is still inside me and Hazel is on the outside. So they have to like hold the baby and like help me swing my legs over, and there's just so much going on. I barely remember it. Like, I'm laying on my back, they put Hazel on me. She pooped on me like 3 times. Like, she would poop on me and then they would wipe it off, and then she poop on me again and then they wipe it off. She's crying, and then I try to breastfeed right away, and your milk doesn't come in until like 3 days after you give birth. So it's just colostrum. When she latched the first time, like I honestly don't really remember it. Like, it wasn't painful or anything, and then she popped off, and so then I had to put her back on, and then it was painful, and I literally could not feed her. Like, I tried and I tried and I tried to relatch her and relatch her and relatch her, and you know, my doula tried to help, the nurse tried to help, and then I just started hand expressing because I was just in so much pain. And then you have to give birth to the placenta, and I'm pushing, and it was probably only a few pushes and I got it out. And that was really relieving too, actually. The midwife is checking me out and she's like, yeah, you have 3 minor abrasions, so I didn't tear at all, which is so great. Anyways, that is my birth story. I'm almost 4 months postpartum. I probably don't remember as much as if I would have filmed this like 2 or less months after I gave birth, but life with a baby is really crazy. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it helps at least someone, you know, feel more confident about going into their labor process. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's @plainoldlaura. My Twitter is also @plainoldlaura. I'm a functional nutritional therapy practitioner, so occasionally I talk about that on my Instagram and stuff. And I guess what you can expect from this channel is more mom baby related content, because I just think that's so fun to make. Probably some nutritional therapy stuff. And also, my husband is on his first deployment and he's like officially gone now. there's some crazy stuff that happened with that, but you'll hear more about that in next video. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.